And welcome to the Philistines podcast, a podcast where we are challenged with articulating a love for art and storytelling. Today I am joined by my honorable friend, Lucy.
Hello, everyone.
I'm glad everybody could join us today. Thank you for being here, because today we will be discussing Ridley Scott's 2024 release, Gladiator II. And is it just me, but does Gladiator II feel like a correction course from Gladiator I? It's very similar in premise. It's very similar in the gambit of characters, as far as their role, in essence, at least. And don't get me wrong, Gladiator II is not an excellent film by any stretch, but it is much better than Gladiator I. The film opens up basically exactly the same way as Gladiator 1, with this little war, and then Lucius's wife gets killed. It's like, oh, that's pretty familiar. And I will admit, it was really odd. I was like, are they just going to retell the story? And yeah, they ultimately kind of do. And it made me kind of think, the obvious thing, like, does Gladiator 1 even demand a sequel? Of course not, really. Doesn't have lore outside of the timeline of Rome, I guess, but there's nothing meaningful left behind in Gladiator 1. But I try to give Ridley Scott the benefit of the doubt, so it makes me kind of think maybe Ridley Scott isn't very proud of Gladiator 1, and he wants to correct his mistakes, which there are a lot of. Because for the most part, we will get into it, the characters are much more interesting here. This is a much more fun film. More entertaining, of course. More shoddy CG. Gotta love it. There's much more performative pieces here, right? Especially with, Denzel. There seems to be much more confidence in the storytelling. Although it is kind of funny that there seems to be this, we're going to make Hannah being Lucius not that big of a deal, because we don't want anyone to think about how Maximus hooked up with Lucilla, because that would be maybe a little weird. The presence of the twin emperors is much more interesting. We get way more out of them. And I guess ultimately this film seems to be much more interested than the first one in entertaining you. It isn't obsessed with this meditative brooding. It does kind of beg some questions, I guess, going from 1 to 2. Like, how did these emperors get in charge and Lucilla's still alive? Like, I feel like that kind of contradicts itself. And she still is kind of powerful. Lucilla's attitude is strange. She's not as strong, I think. I don't know, it's definitely a mixed bag, but I'm happy with what I saw, and I'm very curious what you think of Gladiator 2.
Yeah, this was surprisingly a decent movie. And I hate to say it, but it's probably because my expectations were so low, not only from the type of film it is that I don't particularly like, and coming off of Gladiator 1, where my expectations of those kinds of films were confirmed. And I agree with a lot of what you have to say too, and I can't wait to get into this, because we do have this sort of sequel remake kind of film with Lucius coming back as a gladiator. And I'm not particularly mad at this parallel mirroring we have of Lucius and Maximus.
Sure, it's a little poetic.
Yes. And we do continue with these themes of betrayal and rebellion and honor and whatnot. But was it successful? I don't know. I'm not here for that mild plot twist that Lucius is Maximus' son. The movie was beautiful. We have definitely figured out fighting and how to make fighting look awesome.
With the exception of those baboons. Oh my god.
I liked the baboons. I liked the CG. I liked all the crazy animals we brought into this movie. But that's just me.
Oh my god, those baboons looked so bad, especially when he was wrestling the one to the ground. I could not. I was like, this, we just should not have done this. But the rhinoceros, very cool. I don't know about how big these rhinoceroses get, but the spread of that man's legs over that rhinoceros, I'm just like, that's painful.
I thought Paul Mescal's Gladiator looked awesome. He had the roughness that I was looking for, craving for from a character like Maximus. He was darker in skin complexion, I guess. Also gruffier, dirtier. And I don't know whether this mattered or not, but he was stronger as far as looking at his muscles. You know what I'm saying? And there is a drastic jump from 2000 to 2024. And maybe it speaks to how men look as far as what's considered muscular of the times. And maybe Maximus was considered buff for a role like Gladiator. I don't know.
He's got a little bit of a dad bod, doesn't he?
Yeah, and I don't see him without the shirt, which that confirms the dad bod. But he doesn't look like that strong gladiator that's supposedly I'm supposed to be here for.
Yeah, like a Hercules type character, right?
Exactly. And I know we've talked about how in the 80s, those actors that are considered strong also tend to be more leaner. And there's also 20 years apart from the 80s to the 2000s. So I don't know if that was just a time and place thing or if Russell Crowe maybe needed to do a couple more push-ups. Like we said, I loved all the crazy fights with the animals. I thought all those sets looked cool. I think a lot of the sets in the film looked cool. Again, wasn't an issue with the first Gladiator for me. I also don't have the best CGIs. The only movie I can think of right now that I have ever questioned the CG was Transformers Rise of the Beasts. That was pretty bad. Especially all the human transformer interactions. I liked the characters. I agree with you. They were fun and interesting, but they still felt underdeveloped or maybe misrepresented. We had some potential with Denzel's character Macrinus, and for a character having such big goals like becoming an emperor, I didn't really get why he wanted it. Was it for money, for power? Did he have a taste of the high life with Lucius's success, so now he wants more? It wasn't very clear to me. I also agree with you with the twins being better overall, I guess compared to Commodus, right? We seem to have these parallels. I love Joseph Quinn as Emperor Geta. The potential for him and his brother were also there, especially with him and his brother having this backstory and making them feel kind of unnatural. Seemed like a missed opportunity. We made them almost more comical, spoiled brats type of attitudes than this evilness or maybe this mystery that should have been there.
Yeah, they didn't make it very clear one way or the other like they did with Commodus. At least we knew with Commodus that he was very aware of his slipping of power, right? The people were more or less ready to overthrow him, and he knew that. These two come off like they're very much in control, but we never see a display of power in any meaningful way because they're always just bickering. They've got a lot of personality and a weird dynamic that I'm very into. They're very cool visually, but why are they in charge? And it's especially weird because it's 16 years after, like, and Lucilla's still alive, right? There's just a weird, how did this come to be? And I feel like we need to establish that to some degree, and we don't.
Yeah, there were a lot of moments that didn't feel earned or established. There were definitely a lot of moving pieces to this movie, and these connections weren't as graceful as I wanted them to be. Some of the connections are lost, although I do applaud it at least for consistency. And I enjoyed what I watched.
Gladiator II was much more ambitious from just about every angle than the first one. And it definitely struggles with trying to make sense of these three major moving pieces. The movie almost begs for Denzel Washington's character to be the main character, especially with the kind of like soft, we're not going to really make this a big deal thing with revealing Lucius is Lucius. The film seems to favor Denzel, but we just don't seem to get enough out of him to gauge what he wants. I mean, like you said, because part of me wants to say it's a little out of left field, him trying to usurp the emperor's right, but at the same time it's just like, is it? Because it feels right, you know? But I'm like a little conflicted on that. It's like, I'm not sure. Like, it makes sense, but I'm not sure why I'm not completely sold on that.
And I think some of that confusion stems from drawing these parallels to the first film and his character being in parallel with Proximus, or whatever his name was.
Proximo,
yeah.
Who's kind of a nothing character.
Yeah, he's a nothing character. We don't get anything from his wants and wishes. We just know he was a gladiator and he became free. And we can't help but to connect these two characters as being the same, because we have been with the other characters, that this sort of seems out of left field. But then when you're rolling along with the story, it does, okay, it makes sense, but I wasn't sold on it like I should have been. I should have maybe retrospectively seen it coming.
And that may have simply been fixed by a better introduction of Macrinus, because he's more or less introduced the exact same way as Proximo. But he's obviously in a different league of slave trading, right? He sits with the emperors, right?
Yeah.
Early on, it's kind of hard to gauge where this man sits politically, because he's obviously influential in one way or another. The presence of the first film definitely kind of hurts this film, especially in recognizing these kind of parallels. But I will say the best part of this movie, this emphasis on echoes, I think it's written above his little memorial down under, what we do in life echoes in eternity. And I think Ridley Scott got a little cute with this, because we see some literal story beat echoes, character echoes, maybe cadence echoes too, but we even get some like visual echoes that I think are very neat, very inconsequential, but it kind of plays up this poetic thing that is almost really good. Almost. For example, we see Lucius's wife get shot in like the heart, the chest, middle chest, and then that happens to Lucilla the exact same way. Very cool. We obviously see Lucius kind of take control of other gladiators like Maximus. But we see at one point, you know, they T-bone the ship with the other ship in the arena. It's pretty cool. With the sharks. We see that again when Lucius T-bones Macrinus's horse at the very end. I'm like, that's pretty cool. It's pointless, but it's pretty cool. We see a Juba-like character also echoed with the doctor-like character here. I'm not sure what his name is. And then Lucius drops, you know, he's like, yeah, I'm the Prince of Rome, or the rightful heir. And that guy just has to deal with that as he goes to deliver this message to an army nearby, right? Another echo to Maximus's army. It's all over the place, and this presence of the echo is very neat. It feels a little lazy, because it does kind of just feel like a retelling. But it's hard to say it's lazy because it's better from almost every angle.
Yeah, these feel so minor that they didn't particularly stand out to me. But I agree that Ridley maybe felt like he could say it better.
I know, right? That's what it comes across like, where he's trying to correct everything wrong from the first one. There seems to be some kind of recognition here from Ridley that the first one isn't very good, and we're going to try to do it a little better.
And bigger
and more ambitious. Isn't that funny? Am I off base here?
I don't know. I get that too, just with how similar they are. It almost wasn't like the purpose was to make a sequel, but you needed that excuse to make this film. I don't know, but I can definitely feel that. My biggest bone to pick with this film is making Lucius Maximus' son.
Oh no.
That's my biggest. It didn't keep me from enjoying the movie. It didn't keep me from putting it aside. But it just felt like a stretch, and it was on the back of my mind watching the movie. It was semi-clear that Lucilla had a thing for Maximus. She was still in love with him from the first film, that he never reciprocated in any way whatsoever. Maybe just admitting that there was maybe something in the past. And I don't understand why Lucius just couldn't be inspired by Maximus.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Like, he wasn't your father, but he was an admirable man.
He inspired you in the first movie.
Yes.
That was, like, established pretty clearly.
He was a symbol right away. What's not to be inspired by? Exactly.
And Lucilla can even still see Maximus in Lucius.
Yes.
We can still have that echo.
Of course. It was a man she was in love with and basically rescued them from Commodus. So what's not to love? What's not to tell your kid, hey, this man was a man of strength and honor and virtues and whatnot, and him growing up, maybe idolizing this man. And I'm with you. I don't get why Lucilla is there 16 years later. Why didn't she go escape with Lucius if it was an escaping kind of situation? Like, oh, son, I need to stay here and enjoy these riches and meet a new man and get remarried for your future one day? If you make it out of there alive? Or out of here alive? I don't know where you're going, but hopefully you survive and I'll be here fed and clothed for you. I don't know. It just seems weird and not explained. To me, having Lucius as Maximus' son disregards everything you tried to make Maximus stand for. And it just opens up this empty sentiment for all the Maximus flashbacks we got in this movie that honestly felt unnecessary. These memories of Maximus, these flashbacks, these moments where I'm supposed to reminisce him or be inspired by him, I don't know, were tainted all of a sudden because of this character now feels like, well, he cheated on his wife, or at least that was implied to me, because in the first film, Lucilla says, oh, my son is nearly 8, and he's like, oh, my son is nearly 8. Okay, so you impregnated 2 women around the same time, and then that's your wife, the wife you loved and would die for her and seek out revenge for her. And wouldn't that have clicked in his mind? Like, hey, wait, you got pregnant 8 years ago around the time we were together? Is he my son? I don't know. I don't know if it was lazy or it was a thought and Maximus was so stoic that he wasn't going to reveal anything to us. But trying to make that point that Lucius somehow is Maximus' son hurts both films, in my opinion. Again, didn't ruin the movie for me whatsoever, but it just made me question a lot of the sentiment and maybe some of Lucius's character development.
Yeah, it's kind of like how they dropped Lucilla and Maximus's relationship in our lap, and they were just like, deal with it. Not a lot of, relationship built up here. We didn't know these characters knew each other in one way or the other, when there should have been obviously a love triangle or something. It's just that on steroids. And so it's a big hurdle to get over. It's just like, that's weird.
Yeah.
The whole presence of Lucilla here is weird. Her character's even off. She's not... Like, what happened? If you're still in this position, you must be super strong. But she's smaller than a mouse. She's hiding behind the emperors. She's hiding behind Acacius, Pedro Pascal's character, which is a weird inclusion as well. It's like Maximus 2.0, I guess. And there's some kind of poetic nature in Lucius, coming to Rome to kill Acacius, and the emperors without knowing, put Acacius against Lucius in the arena. All is revealed, and before we can have any kind of reconciliation, Acacius is shot up by a bunch of arrows, which is cool visually. But it's so weird. It's just so, why is Lucilla still here? Like, how is she still alive?
Yeah.
How is she still some kind of influential? She's sitting with them, right? I don't get it. It definitely is a hurdle. And I will say, as big as a problem as that is, because the movie kind of lives on that hill, Lucius being Maximus's boy is still better than Gladiator 1.
No, you completely make some great points. She doesn't feel as strong as she was in the first film. Like, if she would have been a boy, she would have been the ruler and a great one too. Here, she just seems lovesick until she finds out her child is alive, and then now she's got to do something about it, I guess. Because, well, I have to, I guess, now. And I'm with you on Pedro Pascal's character, Acacius. From all the promotional content, I thought he was going to be more of an integral part of the story than he was, especially with people loving him so much. I like what you said about him being Maximus 2.0 because it felt like he should have been the parallel to Maximus and not Lucius. And then Lucius would have, I don't know, admired him, or I don't know. I'd have to think that one through.
We probably should just axe Acacius from the movie.
Or, yeah. I guess we needed someone to kill his wife to avenge, but then why give him so much character that we don't develop? Like, the crowd's loving him.
Yeah, his ties to the rest of the characters and what's going on put him in a weird position because he's a hardcore catalyst to pull Lucius back to Rome and to drive him. He motivates him. He's filled with rage, which is cool. I like that Lucius is filled with something so primal versus Maximus's, vengeance and kind of last duty. But I think we ultimately needed much more of Acacius. Maybe he should have been this liaison between a dead Lucilla and Lucius. Him somehow identifying that he was Lucilla's, final love before she got killed or died or whatever. And there's some kind of relationship built there. He's the stepdad. I don't know. He was obviously underutilized, Pedro Pascal.
I agree.
He is much more interesting than Lucilla.
I absolutely loved the introduction to the movie. That's probably my favorite part. Talk about grandiose here. It was wild. It was crazy. It was so fun to watch. The cinematography looked great. Again, I don't have the best CGI, so I don't know what was CG in that sequence. But the ships looked great. The water looked great. Those ships having platforms for them just to hop onto the building was fucking awesome.
Oh, those were cool.
Those are cool. We had people dying left to right. That fighting sequence was, it was excellent to me. I could tell what was going on. I could see those arrows penetrating, killing people. There was a moment where Lucius stabbed somebody and it went through the chainmail, and I could tell that that's what happened in that interaction. It wasn't fuzzy or too fast. It was beautifully paced.
Yeah, the violence is much more confidently caught on camera.
Exactly.
Here, for sure.
It was a chaotic, beautiful mess, and I loved it. Not only did Lucius lose his wife here, but he saw her being taken away by the Grim Reaper, and I thought that was fucking awesome. Not only did you just watch your wife die, but you're seeing her taken away. Like, what the heck? That's crazy to watch. And although it draws these parallels to the first one with the revenge story, or at least the watching someone you love die, it also begs the question, why is Lucius here? What happened? Now I'm invested. Now I'm interested.
Yeah, and then they give you a strange answer, very half-hearted.
Yes, but that start was cool.
Yeah, the hook is good.
And I guess on a minor note, I also liked in the ship when they enslaved everybody and they were taking them to Rome, we see I guess he's a friend. I'm not sure exactly what his title was or who he was, but it was Lucius's friend and he got hurt. And I just love what he said. This gallery was taking us someplace I cannot endure. And then he said, I'm ready to be taken to another place. And although we didn't get anything else with him, we didn't get anything with him, not anything else, that sat with me. Him saying that. Just accepting that I'm a goner. And just what an interesting way for that to have been said. How did you feel about that 2-3 minute long animated introduction that you see in the beginning? Was it as pretentious as I think it was? Or was it a respectable homage to the original?
I think visually is very cool, but it does make you kind of think, it kind of contradicts what I'm kind of thinking, that he's correcting course on some level.
Because it was just way too long, in my opinion. I thought it was cool, maybe the first 10 seconds, and then it continued for another 2-3 minutes, and I was just like, why am I watching this?
Yeah, it kind of comes across like, you remember how good this was? Just you wait. But then we proceed to get what appears to be that correction course. We're going to do everything the same, basically, but better. So it just begs the question, along with bringing up the fact that Lucius is Maximus's son, what makes you believe we should even bring up the first movie at all? Because it kind of throws it under the bus to some degree.
Especially with, like you said about the first movie, there kind of being this love triangle. And who is Lucius's father? Because I think in this film, someone makes the joke that he's Commodus's kid. But why is that being brought up? Is he trying to say that there was a love triangle in the first one, but it just wasn't executed well? And I didn't get that?
It's like more of this correction course where now he's retroactively trying to correct a memory that there was this love triangle, when in reality it's set up as that way, but it doesn't go anywhere. There's no payoff.
Yeah. Nothing was reciprocated in the first film between or from Maximus to Lucilla and Commodus to Lucilla. Lucilla was clearly into Maximus with no reciprocation. Commodus was clearly into Lucilla with no reciprocation. But now he's telling us there was. But then again, that was just a rumor from some rando. So I don't know. It's weird. But how did you feel about the ending of the film? Very different to the first one. Because it felt a bit anticlimactic to me, but I'm not sure why.
Well, it's kind of similar to the end of the first one, except on some level we're happy Maximus is now with his wife and kids, or maybe theoretically we're supposed to be. We have a big so what and a now what with Lucius. He didn't want to be emperor per se. He doesn't have a manifesto. He doesn't want to change Rome outside of being inspired by Marcus Aurelius's giving Rome back to the people kind of spiel.
Which is the same spiel Maximus got.
Yes. How about now we identify why that's important?
True.
It's kind of antithetical to what Macrinus was preaching about, how Marcus Aurelius was saying we need to have someone unlike what we've had before. But now we're retrograding to exactly what we had before. Like, what makes Lucius different than everything that come before? The twin emperors felt more different than retrograding to the rightful heir, who, as far as we know, is politically retarded. He's just a warrior filled with rage. I don't know if I want this man running a country. He's not meditative. He's more thoughtful than Maximus, for sure. But he's more kind of inward looking than wanting to take care of a nation or ignite a nation to take care of itself, you know? he's maybe more philosophically inclined than politically inclined.
Yes.
So it does kind of end on a note of like, okay, so
Now what? All this fighting, all this killing, for what?
and you even kind of see that in how the two parties of armies react. They don't charge in and attack. There's no like clear opposition to them. They don't have a chosen, side. They're just kind of like, all right, I guess now you're our king. It's just like, I guess the rightful heir thing holds a lot of weight in this world, which I don't know if it's a good thing based off of Marcus Aurelius's we should do something different.
Yeah, and I think Macrinus makes a point that just because you're an heir doesn't mean you own it. You have to take the throne, which is, I guess, what he does here. He kills Macrinus, who technically took the throne. So now it's both his by heir and by forceful taking, which are both probably wrong, because you don't want to instigate that. It's similar to, I guess, the wand power in the Harry Potter world, and forcefully taking someone's wand, and just the implications of what that is taking someone's wand enough by disarming them, or do you have to kill them? And killing them is the surest way to own their wand now. Doesn't mean it's right, but it just brings into question all this unnecessary killing to own something, which again, like you said, is what Marcus Aurelius wanted to get rid of. Or at least I think that's what he wanted to get rid of, based off the first movie, if I interpret it correctly.
All right, man. Well, thank you for watching this movie and talking about it here today.
You're welcome.
Do you have a budget guess?
All right, my budget guess is 150 mil. This is a long movie, a big production movie. There's a lot of CG, there's a lot of actors, there's a lot of people, a lot of costumes, a lot of sets. Seems expensive. Also seems like Ridley Scott likes to spend, especially with the first Gladiator back in 2000 being 110. Again, I'm not sure how inflation took that into account, but it seems like maybe he'd spent more in this film. So I'm going with 150. But now that I'm saying all this, 150 sounds way too low. So it's 150 plus.
Well, it says here on Wikipedia, after some production trouble, the budget ballooned up to 310 million.
No way.
That's pretty crazy.
Who spends $310 million on a movie? Maybe he was confident that this was going to make a lot of money.
Yeah, that's a mess. And it went on to make 462 million.
Ooh. I guess at least it was over 310.
Yeah, it's probably a pretty big bust, though.
Oh, man.
After, all the splits and marketing and whatnot. And over on Letterboxd with 1.04 million people, they weighed in at a 3.3.
Okay.
Quite a bit lower than the first one.
But higher than I thought it was going to be. I am not seeing great reviews on this movie. I'm giving it a 2.5. I enjoyed more things than downfalls. It seems like it was just a story cohesiveness element than a production, what I'm actually watching, pacing element. I would recommend this movie to somebody. I would probably watch this movie again.
Did you like this more than Napoleon?
No, I definitely like Napoleon more. There was a big focus there that I appreciate. It seems like the opposite of what happened to me happened to the people. Because I had such a bad experience with Gladiator 1, my expectations were low, thus lifting me up. But it seems like people loved the first Gladiator, so their expectations were high, thus this film brought them down.
Yeah, and Ridley Scott left this film open because of the Lucilla Maximus thing. It's like, see, it's a bad movie because it relies on a weird continuity discrepancy. I think I'm leaning towards a 2.5. as well. It's almost a 2, but it's fun. Some great performances, some great cinematic efforts, some great dialogue, some great characterization. Of course, we could have had more. It's an ambitious movie, so it just kind of comes with the territory. The ceiling for great characterization with such an ambitious movie is tough.
Yeah, almost like you should have developed your characters better and then had a part 1, part 2.
Or probably a TV show. This
Yeah.
kind of stuff demands much bigger run times and has everything to do with the content, the context of what's happening.
Yeah, that's a great point. If I want to feel betrayal, I need to be with these characters at least 3 episodes.
Yeah. But a 2.5 feels right. I think I also gave Napoleon a 2.5, and I actually think that film's much, much, much better. But this movie made me feel good, and that's all that matters. Well, man, thank you again, and thank you guys for listening to this episode of the Filmsteins. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Remember, we post every Wednesday and Friday with brand new episodes on all of our free feeds, and every other Monday on patreon.com/Filmsteins for Patreon exclusive episodes. Our next episode will be on the animated film Flow, about a black cat.
Aww.
It's nominated at the Oscars, and that's the only reason I know about it.
Okay.
So please look forward to that. Hopefully that's a goodie. Remember to leave nice comments, thoughts, and ideas on our Patreon as well. Come subscribe. Come right in. Come request a film. We appreciate all the support. Thank you guys. But until next time, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of the Filmsteins. Thanks for tuning in and joining us on our cinematic journey. We hope you enjoyed the discussion and gained some new insights and perspectives on the world of movies. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform, especially Patreon at patreon.com/Filmsteins. And follow us on social media for more film-related content. We love hearing from our listeners, so if you have any feedback, suggestions, movie recommendations, or book recommendations, please feel free to reach out to us. Until next time, keep watching and keep loving the magic of movies. This is the Filmsteins signing off.